Hello and welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Vladimir Suluhub. At midnight on August 15th, the system of electronic income declarations was officially launched in Ukraine. However, not without a scandal. The State Agency for Information Protection and Special Communications of Ukraine did not issue the necessary security certificate. This means that the system cannot be formally used to prosecute public officials who falsely report their assets. Join me now to make sense of what is happening with the launch of the system of electronic income declarations is senior analyst of Transparency International Ukraine, Mr. Oleksandr Kalitenko. Mr. Kalitenko, welcome to Ukraine Today.
Good afternoon. So,
Mr. Kalitenko, the e-declaration system was launched at midnight on August 15th, but apparently there are some technical problems with with this system, and the activists and some of the MPs are encouraging the public officials actually not to provide their income declarations into that system. What is going on?
Exactly. If public officials submit their declarations right now without appropriate certificate of security, that means there will be no responsibility for these public officials for false information in these declarations. So it could be used by potential corruptionists, actually, to hide their assets and hide their, for example, interest as well.
But can you explain why this special certificate is needed for this system of e-declarations?
This special certificate needed for this system because of the some laws declared by National Agency on Corruption Prevention. According to this law, this system of electronic declarations should have this certificate because there is confidential information like personal data.
So, Mr. Kalitenko, the process for preparation of the launch of this system has been lasting for months. But now, all of a sudden, in the end of this process, when everything was ready to be launched, it appeared that there is some sort of a hiccup. What do you take of this all?
Actually, we just heard for first time the position of Mrs. Korchak, the head of National Agency on Corruption Prevention, that something is wrong with this system only last Friday, when the appropriate certificate wasn't launched. So before that, in July, for example, there was a special group for the quality assessment with representatives of National Agency on Corruption Prevention, with representatives of State Agency for Information Protection and Special Communications as well. And they actually accept this system as a proper system. So only this Friday we heard that accusations to the developers, and we heard also different positions of Mrs. Korchak. Last Saturday she stated that electronic declarations will not be launched without this certificate, but on Sunday they actually members of National Agency on Corruption Prevention, except Mr. Ruslan Ryabashapka, approved this decision to launch.
Mr. Kalitenko, obviously this system is part of the broader network of prevention and fight with corruption, and a lot of analysts were saying that the system, the corrupt system, will be resisting these changes, will be fighting with these changes. Is this one of the way to resist the change and sabotage this reform?
Yes, this is like a corruptionist counter-revolution right now in Ukraine, where potential corruptionists want to resist this system because they should indicate their cash, their, for example, assets in the very, very transparent way. So that's why it's a key issue to fight corruption in Ukraine. And this is a revolutionary issue because for the first time, for the false information at declaration, the public official who provides false information could go to the jail for 2 years.
who is responsible for sabotaging this vital reform?
We see the head of the state agency for information protection, special communications, and also the head of National Agency on Corruption Prevention as the main figures, main persons who sabotage this launch of e-declarations. But we are also expected the reaction from the president of Ukraine, because he promised in June to the chair of Transparency International, Mr. Jose Ugas, to launch e-declaration properly. So we are waiting his reaction actually to this critical situation.
Well, this scandal has been, this problem has been lasting for, it's the second day now today, and still there was no reaction from the president of Ukraine, even though there was already official statement by the chairman of Transparency International as to non-acceptance of this issue. Do you think that the president of Ukraine will react anytime soon?
We're still waiting for his political will, and we still wait for his reaction after our statement from the global transparency today. So we still see some changes.
What about the responsibility for the persons who are directly responsible for sabotaging this reform? These two agencies which you mentioned, the one which did not issue the proper certificate and the other which is actually vested with the task of corruption prevention. Are you expecting that these persons will be held liable for that?
We're expecting a proper investigation for their actions, actually, and it was announced already by Prime Minister Mr. Groisman, so we will wait for the results of this investigation.
So Prime Minister Groisman already announced that the investigation will take place.
Yes.
Following this investigation, what you as the watchdog of this reform would expect to see?
Dismissal at least, but it could be also the other liability, depends on results of investigation.
Mr. Kalitenko, if we could go back to the issue of the silence, of this unusual silence of the president of Ukraine, this is the key. The launch of these e-declarations is a key issue for Ukraine getting a visa-free regime with the EU, for Ukraine getting a tranche from the IMF, and many other cooperation steps which Ukraine has currently with its Western partners. And this is something which President of Ukraine promised to the people and to the Western partners. What do you take from this silence for the second day already?
This is suspicious, actually. The silence is suspicious because it's not about only visa-free regime. This is not about tranche from IMF. This is also about the credits from European Union, US government, and so on and so forth. And, for example, the head of National Bank, Mrs. Gontareva, could also say something about this critical situation, because it's, I'm not understand how Ukraine will resist this crisis, financial, in this fall, for example, without this tranche.
Do you think that the president is not aware of the situation, or he is not ready to comment on it?
I think he is aware about this situation because, for example, yesterday we launched a Facebook storm regarding this situation, but he may prepare this reaction according to the latest updates, according to our, for example, latest statement from the Global Transparency International. So we'll still wait for a reaction.
Yeah, indeed, we're waiting for the reaction from the president as well. Mr. Kalitenko, many thanks for finding the time to come and talk to us. We'll be definitely following the developments really closely. We were discussing the problems with the launch of e-declarations in Ukraine with senior analyst of Transparency International Ukraine, Mr. Oleksandr Kalitenko. I'm Vladimir Solokhub. Thank you for watching Ukraine Today.